Welcome back to the Sunday Show. I'm Michael Steele, filling in for Jonathan Capehart. Now, with less than 80 days until the midterms, the battle for the Senate is heating up. The Cook Political Report has now declared the race for the majority a toss-up. On Thursday, Senator Mitch McConnell cast doubt on any chances of Republicans emerging victorious.
I think there's probably a greater likelihood the House flips than the Senate. Senate races are just different. They're statewide. Candidate quality has a lot to do with the outcome.
Candidate quality. Yeah, that's it. That's one way to put it. McConnell is actually being polite here, folks. Let's listen to what he's actually dealing with.
I've never really felt it was society's responsibility to take care of other people's children.
I was good air, decided to float over to China, bad air. So when China gets our good air, their bad air got to move.
At one time, science said man came from apes. If that is true, why are there still apes?
So I did some grocery shopping. I'm at Wegner's, and my wife wants some vegetables for crudité. Guys, that's $20 for crudité, and this doesn't include the tequila. I mean, that's outrageous. We got Joe Biden to thank for this.
I mean, if I was Dr. Oz, I would shift my focus to the polls where it ain't looking so fresh, crudité. Joining me now is Rachel Bitecofer, political strategist and host of The Cycle on Substack, and my friend Tom Perez, former DNC chair and former Secretary of Labor under President Obama. Welcome to you both. Rachel, let's start with you. So you've got Fetterman, who has a significant lead over Oz in the polls at this point. You've got Mandela Barnes, who's also ahead of Ron Johnson. Democrats have to be feeling pretty good about their chances for the Senate majority right now. So how does this change their strategy in other races moving forward?
Yeah, we're really seeing the expansion of Democratic advantages in these key states because the midterm fundamentals are being shifted away from Biden and Democrats and the sausage-making, woes of uniting progressives and moderates. And it's moved on instead to frame this cycle as a referendum on the Republican Party writ large, especially its craziness. And you can't ask for any better definition or, example of crazy candidates than Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker down in Georgia. So, I'm one of those people that think that really good candidates matter, really bad candidates matter, and like most candidates are kind of inconsequential, right? But in the case of this cycle, we are talking about some very bad Senate nominees.
So Tom, you've got McConnell almost admitting defeat at this point with his remarks on the Senate saying that candidate quality has a lot to do with the outcome. As if he's had very little to do with the crop of extreme candidates that the GOP has put forward. Why do I say that? Well, because he's been enabling Trump's actions a lot. So how do you think this is going to play out for him? He won't just call a spade and just say, look, we're up. But what's really up here?
Right. Well, you're right. And the field is expanding. And when you look behind some of the polling, and I'll give you one example, the Marquette poll that came out in Wisconsin last week, what you're finding is that Mandela Barnes has a double-digit advantage among independent voters. They don't buy all the Ron Johnson denying of the election and the insurrection. And I use that as one example because when you run candidates who are talking about the issues that matter most, and we're talking about health care, we're talking about prescription drug costs, insulin, we're talking about creating jobs, we're talking about the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And what's interesting is, I want to see a law passed that says that all the Republicans who voted against infrastructure bill shouldn't be allowed to go to any ribbon cuttings. And what we're seeing now across the country, look in Ohio, Michael. The Republicans just bought a lot of ad time because they know J.D. Vance is in trouble.
I just wanted to go to 4 with Tom to pick the follow-up.
That's what we do.
Back. So Tom, I want to continue on that point with the new NBC poll that's showing that 73% of college Democrats, however, don't want Biden to run in 2024. given everything you're saying, all the momentum you've just referred to, all of the opportunities with the Democratic candidates in states like Pennsylvania, et cetera, is this election a referendum on Biden as president or on the entire idea of moderate Democratic leadership? Because there seems to be some tension that's still there.
Well, I mean, you and I both understand as former chairs of parties the challenges that exist in midterm elections. Yeah. I'm really optimistic, notwithstanding the headwinds that we confront with the war in Ukraine and inflation. I'm optimistic for the following reason. We're focusing on the issues that matter most for voters. Healthcare, good jobs, climate change, bringing down the cost of prescription drugs. And as you said at the outset of your show today, Republicans don't have a philosophy. They don't have any governing philosophy other than what Donald Trump tells them to do. And that's why I think that we can indeed withstand these headwinds, not only in the Senate, but the House as well. It's a taller order in the House. But I do think that as the American people focus on what's happening to women seeking access to abortion, you saw Kansas. I work with American Bridge, and I'm proud of the work that we and others did in Kansas. I don't think Kansas is an aberration because the issue of freedom is really on the ballot, the freedom of women to make a choice. And so I really believe that this November, we can defy a lot of the conventional wisdom. And it is aided and abetted in no small measure by the fact that Republican Senate candidates across the country are extreme. They're really extreme.
So, Rachel, on that point of extreme, you have the Democrats actually putting forth an agenda that the American people seem to like, certainly with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. You've seen momentum moving towards them. But at the same time, that same poll showed that 67% of rising college sophomores get their news from social media. So how important is it to pay attention to where young people are getting their news? How are they learning about these successes of the Biden administration as part of their overall use of social media and making that a part of their campaign strategy going into November?
There's a lot of moving parts that have to come together here for Democrats to flip a referendum effect around on the Republican Party, the Senate, and then potentially hold the House, right? So with there's no easy way to do that. The strategy that I'm working on is about aggregation of marginal gains, and there has to be marginal gains amongst the youngest voting bloc. So, Michael, when you ask what is going to motivate them, how do we get this information in front of them? I do think the credit claiming component is mostly important to that young voter pool, but I do think it needs to be presented in a way that wedges the policy gains, and frames it in a makers-takers language that makes these young people afraid not to vote in 2022.
So let's continue with that idea, though, because you've got the specter of Donald Trump running for president in 2024. So do you think it's going to matter, Rachel, that he's been kicked off of every major social media platform? Will that have an impact on his chances? I know you've done some incredibly good work into this space. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, number one, keeping Donald Trump off of social media is absolutely, crucial to maintaining American democracy. And if it had been done when he first ascended that golden escalator and broke Twitter policies, we would not be having the conversations about collapsing democracy that we're having now. That is to say, though, Michael, it will be tremendously devastating to Trump to not be on Twitter and Facebook for any election cycle. I personally think that if he announces to run or keeps posturing to run, every time he opens his mouth and mentions coming back to the political stage, it helps us with our efforts to secure democracy against Republican majorities this fall.